How do my charts look so good? I mean, how does everyone just not look at this and go, wow, this is how a true trader analyzes the financial markets? I mean, when you look at these lines, what do you see? I mean, most people see lines. I see money. Um, Obviously, I'm joking. I just thought it'd be a little light-hearted to start off with, ironically, something similar to what I used to actually trade with. I used to actually believe that drawing lines either diagonally in a trend line form or horizontally in a lot of ways was going to be the single thing that I needed to transform my trading. And I think this is a situation that a lot of people find themselves in because they end up going down a rabbit hole of more and more complicated rules. Now, I like trading rules to a point. I think that it also depends on the type of person. But in this video, what I really want to share with you is I want to show you why understanding the dynamics of rules and also the dangers of having rules really was one of the things that helped me to perceive the markets in a better way. It also stopped me from overcomplicating things whenever I found myself. And it really helped me to understand why I was doing it so that I could stop doing it. I know, fucking cosmic, right? So let's get to the crux of it. What the hell am I talking about? That's a fair question. Let's break it down. Here's what most people will do. They'll start trading. For me, I had like an initial lucky streak for like a month or two. And then I kind of started learning more and more and more and more and just started literally losing till kingdom come. And eventually, what happens for most people is they start kind of getting to like this break even stage, right? Now, this is typically where most people spend the most amount of time in their trading journey. For me, it was over 2 years just in this little segment alone, where I wasn't really doing anything. Every single time I'd go like slightly higher than I'd ever been, and then I'd go and make like the lowest low that I'd ever had. And it was just this horrible pattern over and over and over again. And during this phase, one of the key characteristics was, all after all this period of losing, I'd made a conclusion in my head, and that conclusion went something like this. It went, I'm losing because I haven't found the right combination or the right edge. And in a way, this is absolutely true because I hadn't found an edge at that point. I didn't really know what an edge consisted of. I just saw a load of fucking goons on YouTube going, yeah, yeah, like just you got to draw this like this because of like this and this. It's like, and I actually used to believe that shit, and I think a lot of beginners do. And that's, I guess part of the process. Um, but the problem was is that what this led to, the behaviors it led to, were the classic behaviors that I'm always talking about being poor. But specifically in relationship to rules, I'd start with simple rules. Okay, so I'd be like, okay, cool, got some simple rules. Then I'd try them for a bit, and then I'd like tweak them, and then I'd like add more. And then before long, what happened was is I realized that I'd always need more rules because this is one of the weaknesses of being 100% rule based. You can't adapt. And so because market conditions are changing all the time, right? If you are an active trader, which most of you watching this are going to be, you will never be done tweaking your system. It's like when I see people tracking like 100 fucking columns on spreadsheets, like trying to find out like historically what's worked the best and the best combination. Like most of the time, what these lead to is just one outcome, which is I am overfitting my results. What does that mean? Just means that you are over optimizing based on the past. And let me let you in on a little secret about trading, guys, right? This is the thing that most people come into trading and subconsciously or maybe even consciously believe. A lot of the time, it's a load of shite, right? Excuse my French today. I'm being very, very bad. I apologize, right? So, what this means is it means that, oh, sorry, the belief that everyone has is that the past repeats itself. Now, this isn't necessarily untrue. In fact, it is true in a lot of ways, but it's also untrue in a lot of ways. And so, if you take a sample size of the past, the more in depth you try to understand what would have worked really well during that period, There is always going to be something that you've missed. Maybe it's the overall macroeconomic market condition. Maybe it's the overall risk sentiment of the market. All these things very difficult to just measure, which makes it even harder to truly understand what's going on. And then it's like, okay, well, if the past doesn't repeat itself perfectly, that means that that perfect little data set of like 100, or maybe I thought I was really fucking special and moved it all the way up to 500 trades, thinking that that's a lot. Even when, I mean, in reality, it's not really, right? If I thought I was really special and I did 500 trades, it's like, oh my God, look how disciplined I am. I'm such a great little guy, right? If I did that, and by the way, I'm talking about this in this way because this is what I did many, many times over. Well, I'll take this and I'll go, oh my God, well, I've optimized this now. And this is mathematically, this is statistically significant as a sample size. And I've optimized the hell out of it. Maybe I started with something like a 50% win rate. And now I'm at like a fucking 85% win rate. I just feel like I'm an absolute legend, right? I start imagining all the money rolling in. I start mentally wanking over the compound interest calculator. I'm sure, we've all been guilty of that at some stage or another as traders, right? Going, oh, well, if I keep this percentage up, then I'll make this amount in this amount of time. Most of the time, obviously, it goes without saying that's a waste of time in terms of your thinking, but that's a whole other topic for another time. And so I would take this and I'd be like, okay, look, 85% win rate. I'm feeling pretty good. 85% win rate, I'm feeling pretty good. And then I'll go and I'll start applying it in real time. And then what will go and happen? Eventually, I will start realizing that my results are totally fucking different. Now, this is going to be for one of two reasons. The first reason is because you overfit the data. Ooh, overfit the data. Now, why is this really an issue at its core? Because unlike what this phrase will bullshit yourself into thinking, the past may repeat itself, but there's a lot of nuances to this. Repeats itself how often? How often does it repeat itself? And under what macroeconomic conditions, under what risk conditions does it do so? What time horizon does that normally play out over? How often are there gaps in between it? How do I know I'm in a good year or a bad year, or a good month or a bad month? Is there a way to find that out altogether? These are just a few of the basic things that go into understanding it. If you really want to go down the rule route, you're going to need to understand a fuckload of stuff. Okay. So that's overfitting. That is why overfitting is going to be an issue. Now, as a kind of subsequent point to that, right? There's never enough data. This is a big thing that I've discovered over the years, especially when I was just trading with the most strict rules you can imagine. And as my rules kept on needing to be strict, and now just to kind of clarify why my rules needed to keep getting stricter. Because I would backtest, right? I'd have a good data set. It would be statistically significant, right? Markets would be doing their thing. But then when I'd begin executing, the markets would just do their thing. And then the results that I would get would change. And then things would kind of mess around and alter. And as things altered, I'd realize, oh, okay, maybe that was something that I should have added. And by the way, I wasn't being complacent here and being like, okay, I've had a losing streak, or I've had 10 bad trades and now I'm going to switch things up. No, I was being sensible, and I was, waiting for, kind of at least 30 trades, which made sense with the type of system I was trading before making any serious changes to the system. So I wasn't being idle, being complacent. This was just something that I genuinely observed. And so then I was like, okay, I'm needing to change things around and tweak things because the market conditions are changing. Or how can I predict that the market conditions are going to change instead of just reacting to them changing? Or is there something else that I need to be aware of here? Or what are all of the things guiding things together? And if that sounds confusing to you, that's because it is confusing. And it was confusing to me. It leads to one thing above all else: overwhelm. This is a very common thing with people who are 100% rule based. They almost always come back to keeping things extremely simple, because as soon as you try and make things more rule based, you are just making a more complicated, more likely a more overfitted set of data that actually has very little relevance to the real world, right? This is the danger of rules, right? If you go down the rule route and you are militant about it, you're like a religious fanatic about it, then what you're going to do is you're going to fuck yourself mentally. Simple as that. You're going to completely screw yourself in your head, and you're going to overthink things. You're going to constantly need to tweak things and add new things in. And that is not helpful at all. And so, what is the point of this video, you may ask? You're like, well, why the fuck have you just made this video to shit on me? Yes, I know my language is terrible in this video. Either get over it or stop watching. But how is this relevant? Well, I'm not just making this video to, stuff down your throat that the idea of simplicity is important. Although, yes, it is important. What I'm trying to open your mind to is what I call the supercomputer inside our heads. What the hell does this mean? Let me break a little stat for you down. Now, I'm not actually sure the exact number. I'll give you the lower number just to be on the safe side because I know it's within this region. Our conscious minds, they process about 40 bits. Imagine a bit is a piece of information per second, right? 40 bits of information per second. That's quite a lot. It's like all of the thinking that you're doing now is mostly within this region, right? It's within this. It's quite a lot. Okay. Now, I'll give you a minute before I write this down, but just have a guess how much data the subconscious mind, not minds, mind is processing. Take a second, pause the video. 8 million bits per second. Now, what I was saying a minute ago is I was unsure of the statistic. I'm pretty sure it's either 8 or 11 million, but I'll give you the lower one, 8, because it's still absolutely ridiculous. So how is this relevant? Who cares? Well, in terms of trading, right? The analogy that I like to give here is imagine that you were walking down a road, right? So you are here, you're walking down the road, you think you're cool, you're like, hey, I'm a trader, like woo, 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 looking at your phone, maybe you're texting as you are walking. Now, this is something that all of us can pretty much do without needing to really think too much about it, right? Now, this is something that just happens automatically because we are leveraging our subconscious minds. A lot of these things are automatic. It's the same as if you learn to drive a car. It's really difficult at first because it's all conscious, but as soon as it becomes automatic, it becomes easy, right? Now, if we were to shift gears a bit, we were like, okay, I know that I can do this, but I want to make sure a robot can do this. Now, let's think about how much more complicated this has now become. A task that we can do inherently, but now because we've added rules, we need to do everything and have everything defined and perfectly organized. So let's just go through some of the things that we need to do. First thing is we'd need to make the robot, right? That's pretty difficult on its own. But as a subcategory of that, we'd need to teach it how to stand, how to balance, how to walk, how to look around, how to read and interpret messages. Otherwise, how else would it be typing messages, translate that and form a response. And the list goes on and on and on, right? Then we need to add in other things such as how to recognize people walking towards us, because we don't want to bump into them or anything like that, right? The list is literally almost endless because within each one of these things, it's extremely difficult to do each one of these things. If you were a one-man band just doing just one of these things, one of these subcategories, let's just say robot balance, if you were doing that on your own, it would take you your whole life to get to a decent level of competency, to the point where you could actually implement it probably really, really well. Okay. Maybe it won't take exactly your whole life, whatever. If any of you are in robotics, feel free to shoot me in the comments. But at the end of the day, the reference and the analogy I'm making is sound, right? If you try and make rules and define everything about something that often you already inherently know, you naturally are making your life extremely difficult because all those things that you just inherently got, you are now having to define and refine and constantly tweak and have this machine that's constantly breaking and you have to remake it and break it and remake it. It's exhausting. And more importantly than that is it's never ending. And that's fine for some people. Some people enjoy that, right? And that's fine. But in the context of trading, what does this mean? Why am I even bringing this up? Well, because for a lot of people, they spend way too much time mentally screwing themselves in the head. When, in my opinion, I think that having and understanding the role of discretion in their trading is actually very important. Now, discretion is not for everybody. but I can't make a single YouTube video that speaks to every single person at every level of competence, at every point in time, at their perfect point in time. It's impossible. So if you don't like this type of stuff, then don't watch it, right? So discretion, what does this mean? Well, typically there's been a kind of argument in trading space pretty much since it began between discretion and systematic. Now, systematic is going to be 100% rule based. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be complicated, it means it can be simple. But what most people find is they find that a balance, a happy medium, ow, just smack my hand on the table. Happy medium is where most people find the most pleasure. Why? Because a systematic system has the weakness of it's not very adaptable. Okay, can't adapt to changing market conditions. For example, if you've got a system that is 100% rule based that works really well in these types of markets, choppy, rangy markets, that's great. But then when it changes condition, that's going to be an issue. And so if you just keep trading the same way because your rules tell you to during this condition, that's going to be a weakness of the system. And therefore, having a blend of the middle ground is often a tool to be able to mitigate some of this risk. Now, this is the most obvious form of risk. You know, anyone with any sort of brain can figure out that a system that works well during this sort of a period is probably not going to work that great during this sort of a period. That doesn't take a genius. That's very obvious. The more intricate details, right? And again, just emphasizing the point about why rule-based systems can be so difficult is you could have a trending system, right, that works really well during these environments, but works really badly during these environments, right? And that again, it's quite a simple example, right? It gets more complicated if you start adding in like certain types of mathematical modeling and statistics and all that sort of shit. But just for us, for the average person, right? That is going to be a benefit of adding in a layer of discretion. Now, what is discretion? Discretion is, some call it intuition, some call it experience, some call it, well, mostly those two things, to be fair. The problem is that a lot of people see this as, okay, well, how can I test this? How can I have any confidence in my testing? Now, I have a student of mine who recently asked me this question, and I'll give you the same answer that I gave to him. He said, I don't understand why anyone would even consider discretionary or something like that. Let's just say you're a systematic trader and you do 500 back tests. Okay. Let's just say your 500 back tests come out profitable. Let's just say you're up 400 R, right? So pretty good. Very good. So what does this mean? Well, this means that this person will normally come out of the other side of this and go, you know what? Like, I'm feeling pretty confident. Feeling pretty confident. I mean, why wouldn't I? I've got all these rules and I've got so much data telling me that I should be confident in what I'm doing. But then it's like we come down and we take the same person who did 500 trades, but they did them. Let's just go to the other extreme. They did them using 100% of discretion. Let's just say they came out with the exact same result. Is one of these more reliable than another? Should one of these lead to confidence more than the other? Well, the only real difference between these is that category one has defined clear rules. And as science will dictate, you need to keep your variables, so the things that you change, or the elements of an experiment, the same for accurate results, right? So, for example, if I'm a scientist and I'm testing which one of these four uh, substances are changing the color of this water from clear to brown, right? Then, in order for that experiment to be valid, where I'm kind of adding one in, seeing if that works, emptying the water out, replacing it, adding the second one in, that wouldn't really make sense if each time, I emptied the first glass of water and then added in a can of Coke, or then the next time I kind of added in a Pepsi or added in this, because you're changing the dynamics of the actual environment itself. Like, the reason science works is because we take things that are controllable and repeatable, and we test them against each other in controlled experiments, right? Now, this is the same argument that people give when they're going for 100% systematic. So we'll represent this with an S, and we'll represent this over here with a D. And so they'll go, okay, well, if you can't keep your variables consistent with your back testing, then then you can't have true confidence in the results that you got from your performance. Now, the problem with this is that this is actually a deluded sense of confidence with both of these cases. right? In fact, not necessarily diluted, but equal. Why? Because unlike science, unlike the natural world that science operates on, the FX markets or markets in general don't abide by clear and concrete rules. The rules are constantly changing. Yes, there are general principles that apply, but things are always fluctuating. And even if you think that the markets are perfectly calculable and to some people very very intelligent groups, like very talented quantitative hedge funds and stuff, maybe to them it is, but they're not trading the way you are, right? Looking at technical analysis and patterns on a chart, it's no more valuable having it as definitive rules, in my opinion, as it is having it 100% discretion. Now, I just choose to be somewhere in the middle. But for the longest time, I used to believe with all my heart that just being systematic was the solution. I used to think that's the only way to be confident. But the truth is that it's a deformed version of confidence because using a discretionary system, at the end of the day, the only thing that's really important is my sample size statistically significant? And can I repeat this in real time? The repeatability aspect is going to be a pro for a systematic trader. But also, if you keep your discretionary trading really simple, the difference is going to be really negligible. And plus, with a discretionary system, you have the advantage of being able to adapt to market conditions changing, depending on how you apply it and all these sorts of things. That's a whole other discussion. But the difference between these two is negligible. They both lead to the same outcome, which is confidence, right? Confidence and a bit of significance in the actual results themselves. But the chances are is that your future results aren't going to look like your past results. They're going to be at least a bit different, and then on the extreme end, they're going to be really different. And so our job as traders is to adapt and to evolve. And if you spend too long obsessing about all of the million and one rules that go into your systematic system, which will never truly be enough because there are never going to be enough rules and the market conditions are going to change, which means you need to add more rules, etc. Instead of wasting all your time doing that, you could actually just understand that most of those things you probably already understand, right? And you can just make decisions based off that. Now I'll give you an example of this. Let's just say, oh, what the fuck is going on there? Right, let's go down to the daily time frame. If you go to a beginner and you say, look, between this line, okay, so let me just make this a little more obvious. Do, 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 do. There we go. One and two. And we go right between this vertical line on the left and this on the right. Which direction is this market going in? Every single one of them is going to say, and when I say beginner, I mean someone that's like never traded before, right? They're going to say it's going down, obviously, because it is going down. When you try and then add rules, the more rules you add, the more complicated it will become. Why? Well, let's zoom into some of this. Let's say someone has a really strict market structure rule, right? And they have no boundaries of what makes it valid, what makes it invalid, of how to adapt it within everything else. They could say, oh my God, this is a bullish break of structure right here. Okay, so we're bullish. And then we kind of go up, and then maybe they're like, okay, well, then we see a break here. Okay, does that mean we're bearish again? And they keep flip-flopping between these. Then they get confused, and then they're like, okay, but this is saying this on this time frame, but then when I go down a time frame, it's telling me something else. How do I make sense of that? And if you keep going down that road, and I'm sure you've all been down some version of this, right? Where you constantly like adding new things in and you add a new thing in, and you're like, oh, wait, shit, but then that doesn't account for this other situation. It's never ending, that process, right? I was on it for years. But at the end of the day, right, if you keep following that down, what will end up happening is you'll end up being so overwhelmed that you just end up feeling brain dead. And you're like, I literally don't even know what I'm doing. I actually can't even analyze the market at all. It doesn't make sense to me. You will almost make yourself stupid by trying to get better. And this is what happened to me. Like I'd study everything so much and I'd be so meticulous and so detailed about everything that I ended up being confused. And this is what a lot of people that follow like extremely rule-based teachers get, right? Now, I'm a big fan of rules used in the right way because I realize that rules in general aren't where most of the magic is going to come from, right? And just to kind of round this off, rules are only useful if they are exploiting. They are specifically designed to exploit an edge. For me, the edge is independent of the rules. Yes, the rules make up part of the edge and they're using to exploit it. The actual edge itself, right, is what you're trying to capitalize on. So for me, I kind of bracket this in the term of environment selection. How do I know? Like as we with the example earlier, like Can I more often than not predict whether we're going to be in this sort of an environment or this sort of an environment? That's going to be a critical thing. And that might involve a specific time of day or specific time of week or a specific type of news event or a specific season of news events or just a specific season of the year or anything that is probably not going to be technical. Then once you found out that you can do that, that it happens enough of the time, then I move on to making the simplest rules possible that exploit that environment. Because what most people do is they start with the rules and they're like, oh my God, I need to make my rules and make them account for every situation and just go and they just go and go and go and go. But then what they're doing is they're trying to make rules that are perfect all the time, whether they admit it or whether they don't. That's what their actions are telling me most of the time. Right. And so what's the solution? Well, for me, it's I focus like 99% of my energy here. And then honestly, you can apply any old rules. Like, for example, let's just say that I'm really good at selecting and identifying trending markets, whether that's in FX, whether it's in individual stocks, whatever. Let's say I'm really good at that. I could be terrible at making rules. I could create a literal rule system where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna like buy at specific times of week. I'm just going to buy at the open of Monday or the open of Wednesday or whatever. And it could ignore every technical rule out there. Maybe you even use indicators. Maybe it has loads of indicators on there. Or maybe you use really intricate market structure. Doesn't matter because at the end of the day, price either goes up, down, or fucking sideways. Right. So you can make it as complicated or as simple as you want. Yeah. So this means for me, environment selection is the key. Environment selection is just finding an edge, and this doesn't have to be complicated either. But this is also why, when adding in discretion, I allow for some discretion in my rules because it doesn't really matter about the rules for me. Like fucking rules, what everyone focuses on. Oh, like, buy my shit so I can teach you my rules. But even what I sell, right? In the course, we've got two simple rules, right? The actual tools we use are so simple, they're so basic. Like a child could do it. But what people don't seem to realize is that it's not the rules that makes it powerful, it's the environment, how you apply it, where you find that environment, how you understand your edges. And so this is what I mean when I say that discretion is fine for me. I don't mind using some discretion if I know that my actual underlying environment is still working and still active and still has a reason to work. Okay. And so been a bit of a backwards video, but this is what I mean. Rules are secondary to the actual edge itself. They are just a tool to exploit it. And what falls into the category of rules? Technical analysis. Believe it or not, guys, technicals are not moving the markets. They're just not. That's not a bad thing. They're a great way for us to structure our risk management, right? But doesn't it make sense to structure our risk around a scenario where there's actually potential for that risk to be in our favor rather than, oh, I'm just going to create these rules and hope that they work like all the time. Right. Um, Now, yeah, I know I've been a bit brash in this video, guys. It's been a bit, a bit Larry in a way, swearing a lot, just being honest. Um, because to be honest with you, I'm just trying to have a little bit more fun with the channel. For a long time, the channel was all very serious, and you know, I, I enjoy making these videos for you. But as I've said recently, I won't be doing this forever. Um, and before I eventually do go, I just want to be honest, share what's worked for me, how difficult trading is, because it's not fucking easy and it's not for everyone either. And all that sort of stuff. But if there's any topic that you want to see me cover, anything controversial that you think would be funny, anything else that you think would be funny, anything that you're genuinely interested in, anything that you think I'm wrong about, fucking shoot it at me in the comments below because I'd love to hear your opinion and then we can have a healthy and honest debate. If anybody would like to come on and debate me live, unedited, let's do that as well. Again, I don't really know what you guys want these days, so I can only go off what you tell me. So please do let me know in the comments. And yeah, wish you all the very, very best as always, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.